We've had a lot of requests for this, so today we will be sharing with you our top 5 best snakes for beginners. When judging these species to be added to the list, we based our decision on 5 different categories: the snake's temperament, its adult size, its feeding habits, the price of the snake, and its availability. Coming in at number 5 on the list would be garter snakes. These are awesome, curious little snakes. They are active during the daytime. They're technically crepuscular, which means they're most active at dawn and dusk, but they are so much fun to just watch exploring their entire enclosure. They only get around 2 to 3 feet long, so they stay a pretty decent size. They don't get overly large by any means. And you can comfortably house a single adult in just a 20-gallon long enclosure or 20-gallon long tank, and you can keep a group together in, say, a 40 or even a 75-gallon tank. With almost every other species of snake, it's best to house them individually, but garter snakes are pretty social. So if you're looking for a snake that you can keep multiples of in the same habitat, a garter snake would be perfect. This is one species that seems to do best with a heat source coming from above in the form of a light, like a basking light, as opposed to a heat mat from underneath. These are natural baskers, so they prefer to come out and bask under the sun, which is why they prefer that light. But that causes this species to be a more easily viewable snake. They're not just going to hide in a cave all day. They will be out and basking throughout the day. Another nice thing about garter snakes is they have huge appetites and they can eat a variety of different food items. If you don't like feeding mice to snakes, a garter snake might be a good option for you because they eat other things like worms and fish, although it's good to mix in mice here and there just for a variety of different nutrients to be added to their diet. If you feed them things like fish and worms, it's a good idea to use a calcium or a multivitamin powder on their food items to make sure they're getting all the vitamins that they need. They can also be fed a pure rodent diet just fine, but if you're feeding mostly a fish diet and you don't want to go the rodent route, you do have to make sure you are careful what species of fish you feed this snake, because there are many feeder fish out there that contain an enzyme called thioaminase, and that can cause neurological issues in garter snakes. I'm not going to cover it in today's video. If you want to learn more about thioaminase, watch this video right here. One drawback to the garter snake is its handleability. They, as adults, if you work with them, are excellent and they don't mind being handled at all, as you can see here, but as babies, they're very squirmy. And if you get a new adult that has not been socialized since it was a baby, they are even more squirmy and it takes a while to calm them down. Now, with regular handling sessions, like 15 minutes twice a day, you can get them to calm down over a couple of weeks or so, but be prepared to get musked on by the garter snake until it calms down and learns that you are not something to be afraid of. Their defense mechanism is to musk you, so your hands are going to be quite smelly after their training sessions. Finally, with garter snakes, the nice thing is they do not cost that much, like compared to some other species of snakes out there. Garter snakes are around like $20 for wild type colorations and upwards of like $50 for albinos like this girl here. However, they are hard to find. It is actually easier to find the albino, this is an albino checkered garter snake, and they're easier to find than the normal wild type coloration, the captive bred that is. Most wild type garter snakes that you see available for sale are field collected, which means they are wild caught. They are collected from the field. Because of that, they're usually cheaper. However, you don't want a wild caught garter snake because A, they're going to be really squirmy since they don't know who you are or what people are. B, you'll be taking wild specimens from a wild population and it's never a good idea to do that. And C, wild-caught snakes often have parasites or other health issues that you have to take care of. So if you want a garter snake, I highly recommend that you get a captive bred individual. It might be a little bit more expensive to get one that's captive bred, and you may have to go for like an albino because the normal type colorations are really hard to find captive bred, but it'll be worth that extra price because then you won't have to bring it to like a vet or treat it for parasites or some other crazy bills that you may incur for getting a wild-caught individual. Number 4 on our list of best beginner snakes is the Mexican black king snake. These are awesome snakes. They look beautiful. Unfortunately, mine is in shed, so it's more like a Mexican gray king snake for filming today. But that's okay, they're still a beautiful snake. They're almost like iridescent in the right light. You see like the whole rainbow of colors in their scales. Mexican black king snakes also stay around 3 to 4 feet long, so they don't get very big. And from our experience, they are the most docile species of king snake out there. King snakes have big appetites, and they do too. They are great at eating. They're very rarely a picky species of snake. But usually with king snakes, that also means that they are a little mouthy when it comes to handling too. But from what we've found, the Mexican black king snake is very docile, especially if you handle it while it's young, and they're just an overall very calm species of snake. Now, of course, this does vary based on the individual, but from what we've found, Mexican black king snakes are excellent at handling. Because of their small adult size at only 3 to 4 feet, you can comfortably house an adult in a 40-gallon tank or similar sized tub enclosure. The downside to Mexican black king snakes would be their price and availability. Because of how awesome these snakes are, they are in high demand, and there's not a ton of breeders of them out there, so you know, with the whole supply-demand scenario, the ones that you do find are very expensive. The cheapest I've found for Mexican black king snakes last year of 2018 was $200. Very rarely, you can maybe find a couple individuals for sale from a breeder for like $150, but those are snatched up really quickly. So you can expect to pay between $200 to $250 for a single Mexican black king snake. Which is funny because we have some reptile breeder friends we were talking to not too long ago, and they were saying how just like 20 years ago, Mexican black king snakes sold for $30 each, which is ridiculous compared to today's prices. But that's simply because there were so many of them back then and not as high of a demand, so they could only sell for $30. But with the increased popularity in this species, especially in the last year we've found, their prices have skyrocketed since not many people breed them anymore. Give them a couple years though and their price point will start to go back down again as more people start breeding them again. Number 3 on our list is the ball python. This is the most popular pet snake in America, the last time I checked anyway. There's some other species catching up close to it though, but they're very popular for good reason. Ball pythons have very gentle dispositions, making them very easy to handle. Even for younger reptile enthusiasts, these are an excellent snake to just hand off to a kid, and they don't move very quickly, which makes them very easy to hold. They're also very easy to find. You go to any reptile expo and about 50% of the snakes the vendors will have for sale will be ball pythons. Because there's so many of them available, their price point is pretty low, so they're affordable as well. And they stay pretty small. They only get about 4 to 5 feet long depending on their gender and how good of eaters they are. On top of all of that, they come in a huge variety of color morphs. In 2018, there were over 5,000 different morphs recorded for the ball python, and that's because there's not only color mutations when it comes to the snake, but also pattern mutations, and then you can combine them and get countless possibilities. Well, not countless, there's 5,000, but still, there's a lot of different mutations of ball pythons available, so whether you want a yellow one, or a white one, or a black one, you can usually find it for sale. Some morphs are more expensive than others, but for the variety of colors you can get, it's really not too bad. Keep in mind though that ball pythons are nocturnal. You can tell because their pupils are vertical slits. That's a sign that a snake is awake at night. And because of that, they are pretty sedentary during the day. During the day, you'll most often find them curled up in their favorite hide, and at night is when they come out.
What morph is that one?
This is a lemon blast, a male lemon blast ball python. The reason why we have this snake is because someone who lives close to us couldn't get him to eat, and that is the big drawback to this species of snake. Not saying all of them are picky eaters, but if your ball python comes from a breeder who fed it only live or fed it only mice, it can be really hard to transition them to frozen thawed rodents or to rats once they become of the right size to handle rats. And even a baby ball python is able to handle rat pups straight from the egg. So a lot of breeders will feed them rat pups so that they're already used to eating rats, and that'll be their diet their entire life, just bigger and older rats as they age. Then they don't have to transition from mice as babies to rats as an adult, because this species can be a picky eater. And if you start with a ball python, you don't want to have your first snake be a picky eater that you have to work with to get it to start eating. It's because of these feeding habits that we put the ball python at number 3 when it was close to being number 2 on the list. We've just heard so many stories from people who've owned ball pythons saying that theirs didn't want to eat or would only eat live, and it's just kind of a hassle and it's stressful if that is your very first snake. Number 2 on our list is the milk snake. These are an excellent snake, great starter snakes for many reasons. They only get between 2 and 5 feet long depending on the species, so you do have to do your research to make sure you're getting the species that will get to the size that you want to accommodate as an adult. Smaller species include the Nelson's milk snake, which are cute little milk snakes, and larger species include like this one, which is the Mexican milk snake. This is our Mexican milk snake. She's about 4-ish feet long and she's about 14 years old, so she will not be getting much larger. And she is, as you can see, very great at handling. They can be a little wiggly as babies and a little bit musky as babies, but they calm down really quickly, we've found, as long as you regularly handle them. So that makes them great as far as temperament goes. Milk snakes are also great eaters. They are technically a species of king snake. Milk snakes are king snakes, so that just kind of tells you they're going to be good eaters. They'll eat live, they'll eat frozen thawed, they'll eat really any size, they don't care. This one was being fed live rats before we got her. She was kind of a rescue situation, and she has some scars along her back from those live mice, or live rats. And when we got her, we realized she's kind of overweight, so we switched her to mice, and we wanted to offer her frozen thawed instead of live. And we were kind of wondering, is she going to take it? And she took it instantly. She didn't care. And the other milk snakes I own have also taken frozen thawed with no problem whatsoever. Milk snakes are a little bit harder to find than ball pythons at both pet stores and at reptile expos, and because of that, their price point is a little bit higher. You can expect to pay between $75 to $150 for kind of your basic milk snakes, like without any of the really fancy morphs. Albinos are of course a little bit more expensive, but still are within that $75 to $150 range, at least as babies. So they're not too badly priced. Because of their slightly higher price point though, we put them in second place because first place goes to the corn snake. These are the best starter snake in our opinion. They come in all sorts of color mutations, just like ball pythons do, and they are very readily available on the market. They're easy to find at both pet stores, reptile stores, and reptile expos, which we of course recommend buying one from a breeder themselves, just so you can get to know the breeder and the individual snake and its genetics. But since they're so easy to find, they're also very inexpensive. They're very affordable snakes. A basic corn snake is only like $20 from a breeder, and then their morphs go upwards of, say, around $100 to $150 for most morphs, and there's of course some more expensive ones too, but for the most part, they're really inexpensive snakes. They also only get 4 to 6 feet long, depending on their sex, again, just like with other snakes. Females typically get bigger than males. This is a male. He is a blood red mutation, which means he has no pattern as an adult on his dorsal side, and his belly is also a nice white color. We would not recommend a blood red mutation corn snake though, because from what we've been told from some professionals in the field is that this particular mutation has the weakest immune system, so they're more likely to get sick. So I would go with something like an amelanistic or an okitee, or really just a normal wild type corn snake is really pretty in of itself. As you can see, they're really easygoing snakes. I mean, the other ones have been too, but these, as a whole, are very calm snakes. Again, as babies, just like with most colubrids or most baby snakes in general, they can be a little bit tail buzzy or a little defensive, and they might be kind of wiggly, but with regular handling, they calm down like right away. They're very curious snakes, and they explore their habitats more than like ball pythons do, which are a little bit more sedentary. And corn snakes, unlike some other species, are fantastic eaters for the most part. Of course, there are always exceptions of some snakes, no matter how good of eaters they typically are, some are going to be picky, but I've never run across a corn snake that didn't want to eat, honestly. I've heard of a couple, but all the ones I've owned have eaten live in previous homes and frozen thawed at our homes. They eat without hesitation. There's no special tricks involved like with scenting. They just eat right then and there. Since corn snakes pass all 5 of our grading categories, they have great temperaments, they don't get overly large compared to some other species, they have great eating habits, and they are very easy to find and inexpensive. Those are all 5 of our categories. This is the #1 snake we would recommend for a beginner snake owner. However, we love all 5 of the snake species we recommended in today's top 5 beginner list. They are great snakes, some just have some quirks, but they're all so unique in their own ways. They're all amazing snakes to consider for your first snake. Of course, don't forget to do your research on the species that you want to purchase for your first snake. Get the entire habitat ready and have it set up for several days so you can make sure that the humidity and temperature levels are correct for that species before you take it home and introduce it into its new enclosure. I hope you enjoyed our very first top 5 video. We've never done one of these before, but since we had a lot of requests for it, we had to do it. If you enjoyed it, let us know. Maybe we'll do a top 5 intermediate snakes that we would recommend in a future episode. Thanks again for watching today's video, and we'll see you next time.
Depending on the species. You'll be okay over there?
Yeah, I'll be okay.
Do you want a glass of water or something?
No, I'll be okay. I just have like a runny nose, which is causing everything else.
Do you want to blow your nose?
Yes.
What's that one?
I have it written down. I don't know what this one is. Maybe I don't have it. I can text her. I'll text her quick.
Okay.
I can't find it.
We can always come back to that too.
Yeah. What morph is?
We could guess.
I
Some kind of
think-
spider is
Yeah.
my guess. Spider lemon blast. But
That sounds maybe
or
right.
pastel spider.
I'm not too familiar with, I know like the basic ball python morphs, but I don't know the fancy ones. He's got spider in him, obviously. He's got that reduced. But what else does he have?
Looks like a lemon blast spider to me.
She responded already. That was
Wow.
quick. He's a London Blast. Nice
Yes!
job. You called it.
Totally off the top of my head.
Awesome. Thank you. He'll be in an upcoming video.
And bleep.